Alissa, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We were just saying how we're visually coordinated with the pink and the white and the grey locks going on.
Yep. It's the best thing I ever did.
It's a
Now
wonderful,
I want to, huh?
it's a wonderful story. I really love the alignment of this because I was very aware of your work when the books were coming out and everything. I think we had books out around the same time, but I don't think we ever met. I just knew that you were doing your thing over there and reaching lots of people. And I just was talking to a friend here, and we were just like wondering about people from the past in the raw food scene. So I just had a feeling to look some people up, and I just totally resonated with what you're doing and where you're at. And the connection was instant when I reached out to you. I just felt like we're totally on the same page. So I'm really
Yeah.
excited for this alignment, and we're bringing the magical energies together from Sedona to Ubud. It's a big portal here, so that's very exciting as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know. I felt an instant connection. And like we were saying, I feel like we were both into like the raw food and promoting that, but I feel like it's funny we're connecting now, at kind of different times, but in different ways, like more with the spiritual stuff and everything. So
Well, I wanted to start by going back to that because, it was a very special moment in time, really. And we did feel, well, we were kind of leading the way, right, with the movement. Do you want to
mhm.
share, like, how you got into raw foods in the first place and how it was, when it was really popular at that time when the books were coming out?
Sure. Yeah. So when I got into raw food, I really couldn't find any information at all. It was like Ian Wigmore's recipes for a longer life and, the mucusless diet and stuff. There was really nothing out there because it was like over 30 years ago. And I started having all different stuff like fibromyalgia and all kinds of stuff. So and I owned a health food store when I was 22, and I was always into health. So I was always searching. And um, I started to do kind of like through those couple of books and just like intuitively eating more raw food. And my background is really in the spiritual stuff, but people started to know me through the raw food because I'm a craniosacral therapist and a polarity therapist and breath work facilitate, I'm pretty much certified in anything you can imagine. But that back then, nobody really knew what that was, let alone, the raw food was a whole different thing. But it was easier to turn people onto raw food because everyone wants to lose weight and feel good and look good. So that was kind of the direction that I went. And I started doing it and I just felt unbelievable, and I healed myself of all different things, and I started working with other people, and it was just miraculous to see people's shift. I mean, energetically and physically. So I just was kind of hooked, and yeah, then I wanted to turn more people onto it. And years later, I moved to California, and I worked with somebody who said, you really should write a book, what we did for 5 days, when you came to stay with me. And it just kind of all happened. And, at one point I was doing like 4-day trainings where people would come from all over the world and train with me. And it was all like spiritually based, but it was just under the guise of raw food, but people's lives would be changed and physically, mentally, emotionally between the food and the spiritual stuff. And then I opened a couple of restaurants and really kind of at that point I had like 2 huge shipping departments, and I was on TV on Tyra Banks and the Today Show and stuff. And then I just got burnt out. And I just finally was like, what am I doing? I'm like helping other people to heal, but I'm really burnt out with everything I'm doing. And this isn't really the way I want to live my life. I was glad I did it. And I was glad I put out the books and, opened the restaurants and stuff. But then I kind of came back to my roots and what I've always done behind the scenes, but it's not that no one knew, but I would like counsel people and do, healing work with people on therapy and deep process work and, all kinds of all kinds of stuff with people. But it was like the raw food was my focus. And I just kind of went through a lot of different changes. I gave my husband passed away 11 years ago, and I gave myself a concussion like 6 years ago, and all these things that I was like, okay, let me, like, I'm not like really on the path, I'm not really like, I'm doing all this stuff behind the scenes under the guise of raw food. So that's when I kind of changed all, like, my whole focus to the spiritual stuff.
That's
So
what I
in
really
a nutshell.
yeah, that's what I really resonated with when you said you came out of the spiritual closet, because that's exactly how I felt. It's like I was using the raw food as a cover to really, it's about elevating vibration for me. The raw food is a vibration, and like you said, 30 years ago, you couldn't say to people, I want to elevate your vibration, but you could say, here's a raw lasagna.
How does it make you feel? Yeah. And it's funny, like when I did my 4-day trainings, I called it a raw food teacher training. And it's still funny to this day, because I would have 30 people from all over the world. I mean, every class had people from, just everywhere. And it was amazing to me that nobody complained and said, I thought this was supposed to be a raw food class, because I would process people at 9 o'clock in the morning. I would start, they were like long 12-hour days. And I would say, look, this is teacher training, learning readiness. I'm ready to teach because I've been up, I've walked my dogs, I've talked to my kitchen staff, but I need to make sure that you're ready to learn. So let's go around the room and just do a brain dump and see what's bubbling up. And I would literally process each person. And if I, stand in front of someone, I can read their heart. So I would, the whole class would be bawling their eyes out. And it would go on to like 1 p.m. My kitchen staff would be like, are we ready to do the raw food? And I'd be like, no. But, and then on Monday, they'd be like, what happened? Like the whole class has been crying for 4 days. And they were like, I thought I was going to do a raw food retreat, but it was magical. And like you said, it didn't matter to me whether it's food or spirituality or whatever. It's all about raising your vibration and elevating your soul and spirit. So yeah, however, and they kind of go hand in hand, what you eat affects how you feel mentally. So yeah, but I would do it under the guise of raw food, and then I was like, all right, I have to come out of the closet and really say, this is really what I do. The food is more just, the cover up.
Yeah. Because for me, it was always a spiritual thing, and I thought everyone in raw foods had the same understanding that it was a spiritual thing, and then very quickly I realized that it wasn't. Like, people were into it for all kinds of other reasons.
Yeah.
So were you always just naturally a spiritual person? Was that always your kind of guiding force?
Yeah, I mean, ever since I was little, I've always seen, talk to dead people when I was little, and I've always been, I remember laying under my piano in the living room when I was like 5 years old, and all my little friends were hiding in the keys under the piano. And yeah, so it was always in me. And then even as a teenager, that was my thing. I didn't really know like what to do with it, but I could always like read people, and and that was like, I'm going to be 55. So that was, like 45 years ago or something. I was always like tuned in and tapped in, but I didn't really know a lot of people who were, I mean, I'm sure there were people, and, but I didn't know a lot of people. Spirituality wasn't like it was today, where, the consciousness is so much different, even in the last 5 years. I mean, even when I would do like inner child work and inner adolescent work and shame and rage and, future self, and nobody knew what I was talking about, even 10 years ago. Now it's like everyone does it,
When The Secret came out, that made it a lot easier.
Right.
Then you could just say law of attraction and people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Can we just go back to that time? Because I know I can resonate with that, as well as like the kind of burnout of trying to do everything and write the books and teach the classes and do all the appearances. But at the same time, it was very exciting, and it was a moment in time that kind of, because raw foods isn't trendy at all now, and from where I am, there's not a lot of people interested in learning about raw foods. But there was this point when it was like the coolest thing. So can you just describe that moment a bit for us, and how it was to be on that wave of it?
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, my life kind of exploded. I never, I mean, I'm not, it's funny because I have 2 books. So I always say, like, I'm not a writer. It wasn't my thing. But for me, I just wanted to get the word of raw food out. Like, when I saw what it did for me and other people, I was like, how can I not share this with the world? Like, this is the message I'm supposed to bring to the planet. Because I was so passionate about it. It really healed me and everybody around me. I mean, I was really like, working with people from, weight loss to cancer to, everything. So I was, super excited about it. Even though, again, my background was in the spiritual stuff, I saw how this was so instant and people were like ready to jump on the bandwagon with it, because they thought it could heal them and make them feel better or lose weight. Um, and then so I was just like going 100 million miles an hour with it. And when I wrote my book, I just wanted to like travel and turn people on to it. But then, like anything, it turned into a huge business. And this was before it got, super popular. It was like just when like David Wolf and Giuliano, like we all wrote books at the same time. So it just exploded. And once when I was on TV, that was it. I was selling like 150 bucks a day. And at the time I was selling like coconut oil and namashoyu and stuff because you couldn't get that stuff anywhere. So I had a huge, I'm selling like nori and yeah, my business just exploded, but it was really fun. I mean, it was really cool. It was kind of like my heyday. And then I was like traveling all over the world teaching and yeah, it was, and again, opening restaurants, which was so cool. I opened a restaurant right in the center, right in the heart of Boston, in the North End, which is like there's like 100 Italian restaurants in 1 square mile or something. It's crazy. And my friends were like, "You're gonna open a raw food restaurant in the middle. It's called Little Italy." And nobody even knew. It was so cool. The first night I opened, it was kind of like Pure Food and Wine in New York. It's super upscale, and there was a 3-hour wait the first night. And people, yeah, and it was a tiny place, but people couldn't wrap their heads around what it was. Like I'd have like raw ravioli and it would be turnip, and they would say, "Well, what's the pasta?" And I would say, "Well, it's not pasta, it's turnip with a nut cheese." And they'd say, "No, I know, but what's the ravioli?" It was so good and gourmet. So it was fun to turn people on to, who wouldn't normally go out and search for a book. Because if you don't know something exists, you don't know how to ask for it, So this was like just going out to dinner and realizing you could have amazing food and feel good. So that was really cool to be able to do.
So what year did the books come out and what year were the restaurants?
I'm really bad with time, like, especially being in Sedona, because it's like I'm jumping time every day. I'll just tell you I went to hike Bell Rock the other morning and it was like 7:20 in the morning. And I got there. It takes like a half an hour to get to the base of the mountain. And I hiked up a little, sat there, I was meditating, hanging out for probably like an hour, hiked back to my car, got in the car, and it was 7:45. And I'm like, oh, all right, I'm in Sedona. So like every day that's happening. So yeah, I wrote my first book, I think 2005. And then, oh God, I don't remember. I forget when the second, I was living in Laguna Beach and I had a literary agent write me and say, "We want your book." And I was really flattered. And then I realized I had to give up the rights to it. And my first book's like my baby, and I said, "No, but I'll write another book for you." So when I opened my restaurants, I called her and I said, "Do you still want me to, write the book?" So that was probably like, I don't know, 5 years later or something like that.
Late
So
2000s.
Yeah.
I still feel it will have another wave of being trendy. Do you feel that?
The raw food?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, it's shifted now so much. Like everyone's into plant-based, you know? But yeah, I feel like the raw food is kind of, I don't know, the novelty of it or something wore off. I'm not sure, you know?
It is the
I
most
don't think,
brilliant diet on the planet. So when
yeah.
I interviewed Gabriel Cousins a couple of years ago, maybe 2019, and I asked him why he felt that it wasn't trendy anymore. And he said because it's a spiritual diet, and a
Yeah.
lot of the people that were promoting it weren't foundation, their foundation wasn't that spirituality, and so it kind of went off key. So I thought that was a
Oh,
really,
that's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because in
Yeah.
raw, it's like you have to be in your truth, right? You have to be
Yeah.
raw.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's I think that's, yeah, I think that's a huge part of why people can't stay on a raw food diet, or they just kind of stray from it, because not just like physically, it's, you know, sometimes hard in society, you know, to stay, to like live, and I don't know, I've never lived a normal lifestyle, but you know, to like fit into society and do what most people are doing, going out to eat, or, you know, eating cooked food and other stuff. Um, but yeah, I think it's like you're, you know, I used to tell people this in my class. People would say, why do people fall off a raw food diet? And I would say, I think there's two reasons. One is just the basic, like you're not prepared, you don't know anybody else who's raw, you know, you're not in that environment, you know. But I also think there's something that happens, and I always explain it like, here's your life. Here you are vibrating at this certain level. This is your vibration. This is, you know, your relationship, your work, what you do every day, your family. And, you know, here's you. And this is where you vibrate. And when you eat raw food, you know, you can do it other ways through spiritual pursuits and other stuff. But with raw food, it raises your vibration. So then all the stuff down here, like when you're in it, it doesn't feel as painful, like you're in the muck. But when you start to rise out of that, then this, like whatever's not working in your life, one of two things has to happen. You either have to let go of what's not working, right? And then keep your vibration high, or you have to lower your vibration. And people do it through not just food, but alcohol, drugs, whatever, so that it doesn't feel like this disconnect is too painful. So you lower your vibration. And I think for a lot of people, like they're, you know, they're not getting rid of the things in their life that's not working. So they have to numb themselves out. So it's hard to stay at that vibration.
Right, right. Because it is a
So,
spiritual practice ultimately.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So in 2020, when everything started happening, I had a really different perspective on it from like 99% of the world. And I wasn't in the buying the mainstream narrative camp, and I wasn't in the we're going to be controlled by robots camp. But I saw this as the birth of the ascension process ultimately. And I've actually felt, obviously, you know, we've all had our challenges in the past couple of years, and I don't want to say it's all been plain sailing, but I've actually felt a lot of release and a lot of freedom. And like you were saying about coming out of the spiritual closet, I found it even easier to just kind of like, you know, it feels even more important now to just say, this is what I'm about, this is what I believe in, this is the way I see the world, and that we are here on this ascension process at this time. And that really involves screening a lot of that distraction and noise out, and really stepping into the truth of what we've come here to be. And it really is a lot more about being, I feel, than doing. That's part of the shift we all have to make internally, is to take ourselves out of this idea of like, if we're not doing something, we're not important, and really understanding our energy and what we're bringing. And obviously when I had a little investigate around your website, I could see you're totally, like, one of the first blog posts I found was, what is Ascension? And I was like, yes. My girl. Just telling it like it is. So we start by just getting into divine feminine, because obviously to me you seem to be someone who's totally connected into their divine feminine. So what does divine feminine mean to you, and how do you express that in the world?
So I love this subject. And it's taken me years to get it. And I will say, when I gave myself a concussion in 2017, I was on my couch for like 8 months. It totally put me out. And I've had that happen, but I'm an experiential learner. So I keep saying I don't need to learn like that anymore, but I basically like smashed myself over the head with a steel bar from the gym. And I was on the couch, and my there's not a lot of people I listen to, but I had one of my friends who's like 100% clairvoyant, was kind of walking me through those 8 months. And he kept saying to me, just be. And, I'm such a doer, but I'm also super tapped in and spiritual. And I'm like, I know how to be, I didn't at all. Because I was like, I'm being, what do you mean? Like, what am I supposed to sit here and eat bonbons and watch Netflix, never do anything with my life? I mean, I'm on the couch with the concussion, I'm being. And he was like, you're not getting it. So that was one of the hardest practices. I mean, I love that you said that, like, we're being called to just be and not do. And that has been my biggest lesson it took me years to get. It wasn't like weeks or months. I mean, to really get, and I thought I got it. And then I would start to do and get into that different energy. And it really took me years to learn the just being, and also to be able to create and just be. Like, it's an interesting concept. So that's what I've been practicing for so long. So when all the stuff happened, in 2020, it didn't really affect my life that much, because I was already in that space of being in the flow, being in the, it wasn't, and I agree. Like, I thought it was more about, okay, this is, I think everything happens for a reason, and we create our reality 100%, no exception. And, I was like, people are going to check out, other people are going to step up. It's about creating the new world that we want to be in. And is it going to be a world of hate or a world of love? And we get to choose, because we're the map makers. Right. And so, it's a huge time for people to be able to stand up and be in our truth. And that's what's going to change the world. So, yeah. And
I feel like hearing and receiving the wisdom of older women is an important part of it, because in our culture, certainly when we were growing up, it was very much about the sexualized version of women, right? And the wisdom of the feminine as what has through, which is being really repressed by mainstream culture. But people like ourselves are birthing it, and then there's people that are trying to shift into this kind of energy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, the goddess energy, right? And like you talked about, the divine feminine, like, how to it, and that was a big lesson for me. And I, probably for you too. I don't like like the doing, like the masculine, but how do I stay in the divine feminine and in the creation, and do it a different way, without the go, 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 do, be, and, I really kind of had to shift my whole energy to, like, be in the divine wisdom, the goddess wisdom, and the creation, and really, like, how do I put that out there in a way that it's not like, it's in my truth and in alignment, and it's not like pushing, it's more just like allowing.
And so what about Ascension? Tell us. What is Ascension?
What is it? I mean, for me, Ascension, people talk about, like, moving into 5D and shifting into the 5D and leaving the 3D, which I've never been attached. I've never been that attached to the 3D world. I mean, of course I am, because I live in it, but, I've always been a meditator, and I've always been, like, to me, like, I always tell people, this, like, what you see around you is the illusion. Like, the table, the computer, the whatever is the illusion. Like, when I'm in meditation, that's that's reality.
Right.
Right. And so I've always felt like, that's where I try to live, as best I can. And I think ascension to me is just like waking up, being in your truth, and people who have never done that, like really be standing in your power and being like living from not being attached to like the 3D world, not getting hooked in, and just really like living your truth, living in the flow, and really just always being like, anytime something happens to me, I'm always like, or if somebody does something to me, I'm always like, why did I create that? It's all my creation. So, and if it's not, I know some people get charged around that. But to me, or like it's, like to me, it's so empowering, because if I realize like I create everything, then I have the power to change everything, and if you don't think that, then you're powerless. So that to me is like the ascension of, just people waking up and realizing that we are spiritual human beings. We can manifest whatever we want. We can create whatever we want. We just make this, this reality, this environment that's around us, we just make it too real. And that's when it gets hard.
Yeah, I like to say ascension is an embodiment process, because people have this idea of, going back to maybe 2012 times, that we were all going to like leave the planet or something.
Right.
Actually, it's about shifting the frequency of the physical form, right? So it's about bringing those energies into the density, rather than the density disappear. It's a transformation process, right? And it's very physical, which is where I think all the food comes in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we're going to not be here. Like, even when people talk about enlightenment, I always think like, if I'm never going to be so enlightened. I mean, I'm in a physical body, so there's always going to be more. Like, and I have people say to me, well, when am I going to be done with, the inner child work? When am I going to be done with the negative ego? When am I going? It's like, never. There's always, we're human, once you die, you'll be done, and then you'll start over in another reality, unless, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very clear that you have a very strong relationship with Mother Earth. Do you want to talk about that relationship to Gaia?
So I've been an herbalist forever. So that's kind of I've always been connected to the plants and the diva spirits and the jinns and all that. I have an apothecary under my house. Wow. In Massachusetts. Yeah, I made, it's really, really cool. I made like an apothecary. It's awesome. It looks like an old fashioned apothecary with like 100 herb jars. And I opened it for a while and people were coming in, but I mean, I make tinctures and, salves and all kinds of stuff. But, and it's funny, I make, I haven't made one in a while, but I make goddess dolls that are like on a board, and they're kind of these spiritual clay dolls. And the first time I met one of my friends years ago, she was like, they look like jinns. You're a jinn. Look at your feet. They're always dirty. You're always barefoot outside, So yeah, I mean, I've always been connected to the herbs. And to me, it's like part of the raw food, and right. And even now, I've gotten into more like mushrooms and, all that stuff, because I think that's going to help the ascension in humanity,
Did you try and get into nature every day?
Oh yeah. I don't feel good if I'm not in nature every day. Yeah. And I have to say, I mean, now I'm on a mountain every day, I'm hiking, and but I miss the ocean. I mean, I'm such a mermaid that like I've never not lived near the ocean. I grew up on an ocean. I live like 2 minutes from an ocean. I've lived in Laguna Beach, California for a while, and now I'm in the desert, I don't really get how people do it. I mean, it's cool here, but I'm looking forward to going home.
Yeah. And I've never been to Sedona. Just tell us a little bit about the energies there.
I can't even explain how trippy it is out here. Like, the first month I was out here, I kept saying to my friends back home, yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Like, that's all I could say. I couldn't describe it. It's weird. The energy is weird. But, and I wanted to leave. I mean, I planned on staying here for 6 months. So I never decided to come out here. I mean, I came out, one of my really close friends moved out here 4 years ago, and he's been out here for 4 years. So finally he was like, you got to come out and visit. So in October, I think October, I came out for a week, and I didn't I did fall in love with it. I loved it. It was really cool. I met a couple of people through him, and went home, and I got off the plane. I mean, I wasn't even consciously thinking this. I got home, a friend of mine picked me up and she said, did you like it? I said, yeah, I feel like I'm supposed to be there. That next morning, my close friend called and said, hey, do you want to come look at a 2-bedroom apartment with me? I need to rent an apartment. And I said, why don't you rent my house? And she said, okay. And then later that night, one of my friends who I had met here through my friend called and said, I know it sounds weird, but if you want to come back out, my friend is leaving and she has this big 2-bedroom, 2-bath place and she's renting it. And it's, I mean, wicked expensive out here. It's like crazy. And it was like, it was the same price. Actually, it was the exact same price I was going to rent my house for. And I was like, okay. And then I called my sister in Florida and I said, you got to come, because I have my 19-year-old dog with me. And I said, you got to come drive Rocco and I out to Sedona. And halfway here, I mean, this was like a month later, not even. And halfway here, I looked at my sister and I was like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? I don't think I thought this through, because you always do stuff like this. And I went, no, this is real, because I can work from anywhere, like online. But I was like, what is happening? I'm moving to Sedona. So, but it's funny, I tell that story and everyone here is like, oh, that's everyone's story. It just calls you.
Right.
But then, so I moved in the middle of December, and by February, I called my sister and I said, listen, you need to come back and get me. I don't want to be here. I mean, it kicked my ass, this energy. It was crazy. And it was like subtle, but super intense. So every month I called her and I'm like, okay, time to go. Got to come out and get me. And then her daughter, my niece, broke her hip. And then her other daughter, she was going to come out the following month. Her other daughter broke her leg. I'm like, okay, I'm creating people breaking bones, so I have to stay here. Like, what is happening? I mean, it was crazy. And I knew I had to be here. And, I realized a ton of stuff, and it was pretty wild stuff. I knew I had to leave where I was and kind of, have this experience. And I was a little too comfortable in my little, my house is pink. So it's like the little pink house near the beach. It's really cool, but it was a healing place for me after my husband passed away, and which was great. And it's this incredible place. But I felt almost too safe. And the last couple of years was saying to myself, I don't want to be here. I want to be here out of choice. I don't want to be here out of fear. And I don't want to live the rest of my life out of fear. And it was crazy. I wasn't scared to go places, but somewhere I knew there was some deep rooted fear that I was safe there. So this definitely got me out of my comfort zone. But it's an interesting energy, man. I mean, there's spaceships over my house every night.
Wow. Tell us about that.
Oh, it's crazy. Like the first night I saw them, I was like, okay, that's not a plane or a space or a star. And I have a ton of videos and pictures. And I was like, I don't know what this is if it's not a spaceship. And then I was talking to some guy out here I met in the dog store, and he's lived here for 50 years. He's a psychic. And he goes, oh yeah. He goes, yeah, they're all over. And oh yeah, they're watching you. And I was like, they're just all over. And then I go up to Bell Rock and I do light language and I meditate and I get sucked right in. I'm in the middle of the control center. I mean, it's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's one of my questions. Is that's one of the biggest curiosities at the moment. Really into the work of Ruben Langdon. I don't know if you know him. He's doing amazing work, and he interviews people who are channelers, and then he interviews the beings that they channel.
Oh, wow.
I'm starting to learn about all that different races, you know, from around the galaxy.
Yeah.
But you spoke already about having this connection with non-physical beings right from a child.
Yeah.
How has that developed for you, that kind of yeah, that relationship with non-physical beings? Is it something that's always been present for you? And do you kind of, are there things you do, you said about the meditation, how do you cultivate it? And also, how do you interpret them? Do you understand that they're angels or from other galaxies, or like how, what framework of understanding do you have? It's like my biggest curiosity at the moment.
Yeah, I love talking about this, but it's funny, you know, I've always like, yeah, like I said, it's not like new. So at first, like when I first would start to talk to people about this, I was like, I don't know, there's not like, I just open up to the divine and like whatever comes in. Cause to me, it wasn't like anything new. And like, I've always had a deep connection to my higher self and God, goddess, all that is what it, you know, for me, it's just like opening up to the divine. And I was like doing a little bit of channeling. I've done that off and on, but I'm not like really into, for me, like into channeling like one being, you know, and I've done that before, but like for me, it's like the universal energy. And I feel like there's, you know, it can be funny with channeling. Like you don't know who somebody's calling in. There's a lot of spirits out there. There's a lot of everything out there, right? And it's like you got to be a really clear channel and make sure like what you're channeling is the truth. And for me, I just open up to the divine and call in people's highest and best. And, you know, it's like I don't, I feel like I just call in source energy. And I've just kind of always been able to do, you know, I've always been able to talk to dead people. I've always been able to, you know, channel in the information, and it's more of like a knowing. So, you know, sometimes I'll pull cards for people. Sometimes I'll do like the bells and whistles because I feel like that's what people need, you know, like sometimes people need something to hook onto, but I kind of just know I don't really need to, you know, use anything. Um, and then the light language, you know, it's funny because now there's like a whole thing about light language and everything. And it was my friend out here. I was on the phone with him when I was back in Massachusetts, and we were talking one day, and he said something. I said, "What?" And he said, "Nothing." And I said, "What did you just say?" And he said, "Nothing. What did you say?" And I said, "I thought you said light language." And he said, "No, I didn't say that, but that is a thing." I mean, it was so weird. I was supposed to hear it, and I went, "It's a thing." And I looked it up, and I was like, I've done that for 30 years. That's, you know, for years. Like, that's what I do. Like, that's how I talk to myself. And my sister, my older sister, said to me, "You've been doing that since you were a little kid." And so now, you know, I do a lot of light language, but I've been like channeling it in more. And I feel like that's super powerful. You know, like on my Tuesday night healings, I do a little of that. And then I just do distance healing and then a little bit of light language, but I have a lot of YouTube videos up with the light language, and I feel like it's, you know, just gotten more and more powerful.
So you just feel it's coming from source. You're not putting any kind of, you don't
like a
resonate with any
being.
particular galactic race or anything.
No, and it's funny, you know, there were a few people out here that I became friends with. One was a big channeler, and he said, you know, you got to go to Bell Rock. He was the first one to tell me to go to Bell Rock because he was like, you got to go to Bell Rock and they're trying to talk to you and you're part of the Galactic Federation. And I do, you know, it's funny because as out there as I am, I'm pretty not like super practical. I wouldn't really say I'm a practical person, but I don't know. Like sometimes people will say, well, I'm channeling like Huka Muka from the eighth dimension. I'm like, really? Like, I don't know. Maybe you are. Maybe that's what they've told you, but I'm like I'm really careful of that because you don't know what beings, there's a lot of stuff out there, you know, and I know, like I've worked with a channel for years. I don't know if you ever heard of the Lazarus material. I've worked with him for like 35 years, and he's super clear. And you know, he used to talk about how there's like all these beings and they can be tricksters, and you got to be careful about who you're working with. So for me, I just open up to the light. open up to the highest dimension. Like I don't really call in a lot of beings. I kind of go directly to source, and I see it as like the highest source energy, you know.
What did you say his name was?
Lazarus, the Lazarus material.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty intense information. Yeah.
So the other buzzword at the moment is New Earth. I wanted to ask what New Earth looks like to you. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like what we talked about before, you know, I have friends who are like, it's going to be a new earth, and it's, you know, we're slipping into the 5D, and it's going to like be a completely different planet that we're ascending to. And I don't really believe that. I just think that we have a choice, like we're going to choose love or hate. And if, you know, hopefully it's moving towards love. And as people awaken, it's going to be a more conscious, like the consciousness of the planet is going to shift. And we're going to see that in the way people relate to each other, and the ways people choose to work and to live and to, you know, I just think we're going to see that shifting, just as we have like with raw food, or just people like, you know, 10 years ago, nobody knew what energy work was. Like the consciousness has changed, and I think it's speeding up, and I think it's a different kind of awakening where it's like everything's getting sped up. But do I think I'm going to be on like living on the astral plane? I don't think so in this lifetime, you know. But I think just as like Atlantis and Lemuria, like we blew ourselves up, right? You know, I don't know if that's going to happen on this planet. Like if we're going to live to see that, I think that might eventually happen unless we like shift things, you know. But I feel like we're still going to be on this planet in the physical form that we're in. It's just we're going to ascend mentally and spiritually to a different, like a higher realm and a different vibration. So, and I do think when you get, you know, like when you raise your vibration, then everything to that degree, when you're vibrating in a different space, it feels like a different space and time, and your reality looks different to you. And the more people that do that, it'll be like higher consciousness and more love and more joy and more bliss.
I think it's generational. So I think the children that are coming through now are on such a different frequency than the majority of our generation. And so their children, that's when it will really anchor in, because their children will be so high vibrational that all this. The example that just came to mind when you were talking is, I remember it was only maybe 10 years ago, and I walked into a kitchen store, like a cookware store, and they had a big display of spiralizers, and I actually cried. I spent like 10 years explaining to people what a spiralizer was.
I know.
Oh my God. So like these kind of conversation we're having now, in 10 years time, all the kids will have this level of awareness, and so what will they do with that? They'll be creating a different world, right?
Right. And I think it will look different in that way for sure. Yeah. I'm laughing because when I got to Sedona, there's like raw chocolate everywhere. And I went into this one store with a friend of mine, and she was like, have you ever heard of raw chocolate? And I was like, I created raw chocolate, you know, and I was like, all right, just relax your ego, you know. I'm like, yeah, I've heard of it.
I was to say, yeah, I invented it.
Yeah, right. But yeah, no, I agree. It is gonna be, I agree, it's generational, because it's gonna be totally different the next few generations, that the world's not gonna look the same, for sure.
So tell us about the work you're doing now. You mentioned your Tuesday calls. Tell us about those.
Yeah, so I do a Tuesday night healing, which is like, I love it. It's so cool. It's on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So a lot of people are in bed, or they just lay on the couch, and I do like a minute of light language, and then I just do distance healing, but it's super powerful. And that's like 45 minutes, 50 minutes. And then I just created a membership group, which I'm so excited about. And there's going to be all different, it's pretty intricate. There's all different topics. There's soul work, healings, readings, light language. There's a tantra area, daily life area. And then there's all these groups for like fitness and clean eating and all kinds of stuff. And I'm going to be live streaming there. I'm going to have online courses that I'm setting up. So it's cool. I wasn't going to launch it for a few weeks until I was like settled, because I'm going to be traveling in the next 2 weeks. But I told like some of my people that were in my past group, and a bunch of people already signed up. So I'm kind of scrambling to get it going now, but it's really, I can't wait. It's going to be epic. So yeah, it's called the Soul Collective.
When you say distance healing, is that Reiki, or do you have a different form of?
No, I just, again, it's kind of my own, like I'm trained in polarity and, you know, all kinds of stuff, but it's just kind of my own. I just, again, like call in the divine, and I hold my hands up and I do like whatever, you know, somebody needs, like if I need to clear something out, and I work on people individually, and then the group as a whole. So
sorry, my speaker went.
oh.
So how do we learn about your site? Where is it? How do we find it?
So if you go to AlissaCohen.com, I have the membership site right on there. There's a button up top, and then there's a big space you can go to and just click right on that.
And it's like a monthly recurring thing.
Yeah, you can pay for the year or monthly. There's 2 different memberships. One is just like the whole membership, and then one is the membership plus the Tuesday night healings plus all the courses. So
I feel like it's the future as well, because I don't know about you, but I'm completely over social media now, and people talk about, oh, when will the new platform come along? But I just feel like that whole way of communicating is really engineered and very manipulative to our consciousness, right? So I feel like just kind of selecting different people that you're into and that you follow, and then kind of like tuning into what they're offering. That's like having channels on your TV more. It's like, okay,
yeah, I totally agree.
Follow Kate.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I use social media, but
when you meet people that are in the same wavelength, right, and you haven't got to deal with all that kind of conflict. And
yeah, it's so cool. I had a Facebook group that I just threw up like a year and a half ago, and I had like 80 people join, and so it's really cool. They all saw it when I sent out an email, and they were psyched to get on it. And so yeah, it's like, you know, forming your tribe. So it's really, I'm so excited about it. Yeah.
And anything else coming up? Are you doing any events, or I saw you do artworks as well?
Say that again.
So you do artworks as well?
So after I had the concussion, I actually opened up an art gallery, and I love that. That's my passion. I've thought of doing that again, but it's always like woven into the background. So I went to Laguna Beach about a month ago, and I did some healings there. And then the woman who has a store right downtown said, you got to load up your truck when you get back and bring all your artwork out, and I'll sell it for you. So, you know, I kind of always go back and forth, but yeah, I love doing my art. But yeah, I did some like in-person stuff, but it's funny, I never thought I would like doing online. Like my Tuesday night healings are my favorite thing to do. So I'm getting you, and it's so cool because you can reach people all over the world, you know? So it's kind of my new favorite. I love doing in person, but I love doing groups. So whether it's online or in person.
Yeah. I love when it's like you said, you're finding your tribe, right? So it's the people that totally get what you're offering, and you don't. I felt like with the raw food, there was a lot of like explaining to do, and it's all now just finding the people that totally resonate with what you're offering, and then they can all like form friendships together as well, and that's the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's been such a joy. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. It's great to finally see you and talk to you. And, it's weird we never met before, but
Yeah.
everything in divine timing.
I hope we get to meet in person either in
I know. I'll come to Bali and visit you.
Bali or all three.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much, Alissa.
You're welcome. Thanks, Kate.